This Saturday marks 2 weeks since the U.S. and Israel launched their first attacks on Iran. Where are we at in this conflict? What has it taught us, and where does it go from here? To tackle some of these big questions, we can bring in Scott Lucas, a professor of U.S. and international politics at University College Dublin's Clinton Institute. Good morning, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me here.
Let's perhaps start with the accomplishments of this war, if you can put it that way. Can you remind us sort of what the U.S. and Israel set out to do and to what extent they've done it?
Well, there's a slight difference between the U.S. and the Israeli aims. The Israelis were looking to have regime change. Anyone associated, clerics, politicians, the military should be eliminated. On the other hand, the United States, I still think, was going for regime surrender, and that is that they had just made the demands 2 days before the war started to Iran: give up all your nuclear program, civilian, give up all your ballistic missiles, break your ties with Hezbollah, break them with the Houthis. And the Iranians said, no, we'll keep talking to you, but we're not going to do that. That's when I think the Trump folks decided to go in with the Israelis. And of course, if you want to talk about success, then that first day on February 28th, the strikes killed the supreme leader. They killed dozens of Iranian officials and commanders that had gathered for that meeting in his compound. But I think both the Americans and the Israelis assumed at that point that the regime would just collapse. And it didn't. And what happened is, when the regime not only did not collapse, but retaliated across the Gulf, which of course has expanded across 2 weeks, not only with attacks on energy infrastructure, on ports, but with the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, there was no plan B. You can keep bombing things. And today we're going to talk about those attacks that supposedly have taken place on Kharg Island, this key hub for Iran's oil exports. But just simply bombing things does not mean the regime surrenders. To the contrary, what you saw yesterday in Tehran was a very clear demonstration, with regime leaders going out amongst the crowds, hundreds of thousands of them, in the Iranian capital, and saying, we're still here and we're still going to fight back.
How is it that the U.S. and Israel didn't have a plan B? I mean, it seems that they should have been able to anticipate something like Iran blocking the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, I find it extraordinary, and so do a lot of other analysts. But, U.S. officials who I think are frustrated let it be known to the media this week, to the New York Times, to CNN, that the Trump administration did not plan for the possible closure of the strait. And we've known for years that if the Iran regime was in serious trouble, this would be their go-to. Indeed, it happened in the 1980s during the Iran-Iraq War. Now, in addition to that, what we're finding is that the Trump folks, according to these U.S. officials, did not plan for the extent of Iranian retaliation. Iran in June 2025, during that 12-day war by the Israelis, had retaliated against Israel, but had left the Gulf states alone. This time they didn't. But again, if you're in Washington, if you're in Tel Aviv, and you're thinking, all right, this is our knockout blow, we've assassinated their leader, how do you not expect the Iranians to say, look, we're going to survive here. We're going to have to hit back and not just sit back while the bombing continues.
Given this miscalculation, by the U.S. in recent days, some analysts have noted that Donald Trump seems to be looking for an off-ramp here. What are the pathways for him out of this conflict at this point?
Well, right now, and again, you've been reporting on the public statements, you're not getting that from Trump. He said, I'm not going to talk to them. And look, we've killed every single Iranian soldier on Kharg Island, and we'll, if they close the Strait of Hormuz, we'll obliterate their oil infrastructure. The reality here is, barring an unexpected collapse of the regime, you really only have, I think, a couple of options. One is that the Americans put in ground forces, at least special forces, to try to hit certain targets in Iran. You might have the option, certainly the Israelis are desperately hoping for this, of saying, Iranian opposition, take to the streets, rise up against the regime. That's not happening at the moment. The Iranian opposition had already been decapitated by regime repression. To expect it to go out and serve the U.S. and Israel is just, frankly, a fantasy. So the option beyond that, at some point, the domestic pressure especially that rising oil price, which spikes inflation, is going to grow on Donald Trump, and he's going to have to try to find for a face saver, or someone's going to have to give him a face saver. I suspect the Gulf states would be the case, which is, look, you can say that you've killed the supreme leader. You can say that you've degraded Iran's military, take that supposed win, now stop, get the Israelis to stop, and go back into talks with the Iranians about their nuclear program.
Speaking of the nuclear program, analysts have also pointed out that Iran still has this stockpile of highly enriched uranium, which would make it easy for them to kind of quickly create, I think I read about 10 nuclear weapons. Given that, as long as Iran still has that stockpile, is the U.S. going to continue this conflict? Could we envision sort of a special forces mission to go in and take the stockpile out?
I mean, again, the idea of the special forces going in to grab the stockpile was another one of those boys' own fantasies that the administration put out earlier this week because of their lack of a sensible plan B. I can give you many reasons why that's a highly risky and possibly not feasible operation. But look, here's the wider picture here. That Iranian uranium, we knew this, was buried last June by those attacks, including the American attack on the complex inside a mountain at Fort Doe. The Iranians were going to take months to have to dig out that stockpile and return to operations. That's pretty much where we are now. If you want me as an analyst to talk about if you reasonably want to curb Iran's nuclear program and make sure it's just for civilian purposes, you know what the Trump administration should do? It should go back to the 2015 nuclear agreement. But you know why Donald Trump's not going to do that? Because he hates anything that the Obama administration did. So here we are, stuck in this limbo.
All right, Scott Lucas, thank you again so much for bringing us your analysis this morning. That's Scott Lucas, a professor of U.S. and international politics at University College Dublin's Clinton Institute.